Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Department of Energy's SBIR STTR Phase 2 Release 1 NOFO webinar. My name is Zina Al-Yusuf, and I will moderate today's webinar. Today's presenter is Dr. Eileen Chant, SBIR STTR Outreach Program Manager. Eileen will provide you with an overview of the background and impetus of the DOE second Phase 2 awards, Phase 2A or B, third Phase 2 award, Phase 2C, and the application process. We will conclude with a question and answer session. So during this webinar, you may submit questions via the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen, and Eileen will address your questions as time permits. If you have a question relating to the technical content of your proposal, please submit those questions directly to the Phase 2 Program Manager. Lastly, we will post the recording and a copy of the presentation on the DOE SBIR website under the Funding Opportunities webpage. So now we will start with Eileen.
Thank you, Zina, and hello, everyone. I'm here to issue a few reminders for you all about the Phase 2 application process, but then take like a deeper dive into the second and third Phase 2 awards. So if you are here, you should be with a company that has or has had a recent Phase 2 award and are eligible for one of these follow-on Phase 2 awards. And we'll go into those specifics during this webinar. Here's the outline. Again, I'm going to talk about a few reminders and what's new in our program, and then I will talk about the second Phase 2 award, which we call Phase 2A and B. We implemented these awards 10 years ago. They were authorized in 2011. They permitted us to issue second Phase 2 awards, and the DOE implemented that program. The third Phase 2 awards were authorized in 2019, and if you did have a second Phase 2 award program, then we were required to implement the third Phase 2 award. Okay, just note, because you are Phase 2 awardees, please note that the Phase 2 commercialization plan specifications have been modified a bit. There are 4 sections of the Phase 2 commercialization plan. It's a 15-page plan, but just review the content very carefully because there has been some updates to the language in that section of the Notice of Funding Opportunity. By the way, our funding opportunity announcements, we used to call them FOAs. We are now calling them Notice of Funding Opportunity, and we call them NOFOs. So new language there. We're going to refer to our funding opportunities as NOFOs. We're having trouble making that transition as well. So forgive me if I say FOA a few times during this webinar. There is no longer the return on investment worksheet is no longer required in your application. You still do have to submit a pro forma form, and there have been some updates on the website of those templates. So go grab, I think that only one of the templates has been updated at this point, but go grab the latest from the website and make sure you're using that version. We have also instituted a limit of 5 letters of support in your Phase 2 application. You do have to create an updated commercialization plan. You can't use your old Phase 2 commercialization plan. Obviously, it's 2 years later. Things have changed. The market has changed. Maybe your potential customers have changed. So please provide a fresh and updated commercialization plan. Include your letters of support, less than or equal to 5 of those, and your pro forma income statement. There's a table of phase 2 application requirements on page 33 of the notice of funding opportunity announcement. So go ahead and check that out and put that by your desk as you're preparing it, and make sure you're completing all of the requirements. We do have on our website a preparing a phase 2 grant application page, also a resource for you. It has a checklist, very similar to the application requirements in the NOFO. That page also has a link to the cybersecurity self-assessment resources, because a cybersecurity self-assessment is required as part of a phase 2 application. That is something that was implemented only just last year in fiscal year 24. So this may be your first time completing this requirement. Here are the links to the pro forma templates that I was just speaking about. There are 3, depending on the business model that you are using. And in the event that you are going to be working your proposed grant as a cooperative agreement, there's a template there as well. Many of the components of the phase 2 application are also part of the phase 1 application. So also don't forget that we have a grant application page that has things like the level of effort, the foreign relationships disclosure form, or the components that are part of the phase 1 application. You have to go to that page to get those resources. Again, so since some of the components, or many of the components, are the same as the phase 1 application, you should take note that we do have a phase 1 online application guide. It's a content management system, very searchable, highly searchable resources, including blank forms, some sample completed forms, and detailed instructions. So check that out on an as-needed basis. Very importantly, your TABA funding for phase 2 grants, you can ask for up to $50,000 for external consultants to provide you with technical and business assistance services. Okay, and that's above the max award amount. Since the phase 2, second and third phase 2 awards are up to 1.1 million for R&D, you can add $50,000 on top of that for your TABA services. Don't ask for more than that, but you can ask up to 1.1 million for R&D and an additional up to 50,000 for TABA. And these services include a variety of services, and they do have to be an external consultant providing those services. You cannot do those things in-house, and you do have to have them as a subcontractor, your vendor as a subcontractor, and you have to provide your budget justification for that subcontract and a letter of commitment from the vendor. If you have had and completed a prior phase 2 award, SBIR, STTR phase 2 award from any federal agency, then you must submit your company commercialization report, which is generated on SBIR.gov. You are required to update and maintain your CCR, and we generally recommend that you update it on an annual basis. And, for SBIR and both applicants, the CCR goes to question 8 of the STTR information form. For STTR only, just to a little bit of a glitch in the information form, we do ask that you put it at field 12 on the RNR, other project information form. The FOA contains instructions on generating this report. I know that SBIR.gov recently updated their website, and I'm hoping that everything still works smoothly and that our instructions are still accurate. If you have any issues, please reach out to us and let us know. As of fiscal year 2023, you are now required to submit a disclosure of foreign relationships. Here's a link to the form. There's a QR code, which will link you to the instructions and the form. Make sure you are using version 6 because we have had a couple of different versions of that form. It's required, and so make sure you include it. You don't want your application to be declined because of this. Here is the information about where you attach it. And finally, even if you have no foreign relationships, it'll be very easy to fill out the form. You're just going to be saying no to everything, but you must complete the form and sign it in all cases. Things changed last year in fiscal year 2024 for marking proprietary data, and hopefully this is going to be a little bit easier for you all. You do want to protect your proprietary, privileged, or confidential information. And there are certain documents that will and are allowed to contain proprietary information. There's, of course, the project narrative, the commercialization plan, and also note that the SBA CCR and the Foreign Relations Disclosure Forms may contain proprietary information, but you don't have to take any action on those because those forms are pre-populated with data protection legends. So you have to put the legend here that's in italics on the first page of the document, and you have to indicate page numbers or any other identification of pages that contain no restricted information. So that's the reverse of the way it used to be. You indicate the pages that contain no restricted information. And then on each page that contains information that you wish to protect, you do need to put the second legend in italics on those pages. There's no more marking with highlights or stars or brackets. These instructions, I hope you find them more simple and easy to follow. There is an instructions at this link and QR code, including an example document. As of last year, the Office of Science added a requirement in which you will be attaching as an appendix to the project narrative your small business's plan to promote inclusive and equitable research within your research project. This is a requirement for all proposals submitted to the Office of Science. They are provided, as I said, as an appendix to the project narrative. They do not count towards the page count of the project narrative, which I think is 25 pages, and they are limited to 3 pages, okay? The plan should describe the activities and strategies that your project and your small business are incorporating to promote diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility in the research project. The PIER plans are part of the merit review criterion of your application. You may request funds for execution of the PIER plan within allowable cost guidelines. The scope of the PIER plan should be integral to the research project. So it has to be something that is part of the project, not some kind of separate standalone activity, such as K through 12 outreach. And very importantly, the complexity and detail of a PIER plan scales with the complexity and size of the project. It's a phase 2 award in this case. And the reason that I say that that's important is that the phase 2 award is 2 years. It is 1.1 million, which is a pretty, obviously that's not a tiny amount of money, but it's not like these really large grants that sometimes the Office of Science will give out. So what I recommend is that you take a very specific focused activity. We don't even expect your PIER plan to require 3 pages, 1, maybe 2 pages is probably enough, and take some type of a meaningful, simple, and focused activity. in regard to this requirement. Applicants are encouraged to focus on areas including the composition of the project team and partnering institutions, the research environment, cultivating respectful, professional, and accessible environments, equitable and inclusive implementation of the project, and partnering with underrepresented institutions and/or underserved communities. So here is the original technical merit review of our applications. And now we do have the PIER plan as a smaller component of the top 3 criteria, but it is one of the merit review criteria. Here's a resource link and QR code to the PIER plan guidance. And then I have a couple of slides here that are suitable topics because there are applicants generally are asking about this. One of them could be mentoring underrepresented persons in STEM and entrepreneurship. You could hire underrepresented interns and/or staff. You could provide professional development and training and leadership experience to persons that are underrepresented and integral to the project. Provide professional learning and educational opportunities to small business employees just to develop awareness, knowledge, and strategies for supporting inclusive and innovative work environments. Partnering with a minority serving institution. Engagement with organizations in the project that represent underserved or economically distressed communities as a core element of their mission. Inclusive workplace practice implementation. Inclusion of community advisory boards that inform the technology development. A technology development with future benefits or energy justice implications for disadvantaged communities. Reduction in household energy burdens, reduction in environmental exposure, resilience of energy infrastructure, future workforce impacts, projects that lead to cleanup of legacy nuclear weapons waste, and mitigate existing pollutions for an affected community. Okay, also that something that was implemented in fiscal year 2024 is there is a cybersecurity self-assessment requirement. You must include a cybersecurity self-assessment with your application. Here are some links to the requirements. My understanding is that the forms are that you must fill out. The assessment is fairly straightforward, but while I'm not an expert in this requirement, I want to let everybody know that we have Florence Carr on the line, who is our cybersecurity expert, and she is here to answer questions about this particular new requirement. This is for awareness only, but as a phase 2 awardee, you are able in the December, prior to the second summer of your phase 2 award, you may apply for a workforce development supplement, which is up to $20,000 in additional funding to support a recruited student for a summer internship. Again, this is for awareness only. As an awardee, you receive an email notification when this deadline is coming up. Okay, so now I'm going to go into some of the details of the second and third phase 2 awards. The first phase 2 award is our phase 2, and all of you here are probably should be phase 2 awardees if you are considering a second phase 2 or a third phase 2 application. Some phase 2 projects are unable to be completed within 2 years and require more time and funding. Maybe your research and development didn't work out as planned. You had to change directions and it ate up more of your budget than you expected. That is the purpose of a phase 2A, is when your research and more, you can show that you made progress in your phase 2 award, but the research and development for various regions did not get completed in its full scope, and you want to apply for more R&D funds to complete the scope of the phase 2. So these are projects that require additional R&D. Now note that you have the DOE program manager select the topics, subtopics for which phase 2A applications are accepted. Please check the notice of funding opportunity, page 14, on eligibility requirements. This is how the phase 2A works. If you are eligible for phase 2 in this particular solicitation, you should have received, I'm sorry, if you're eligible for phase 2A in this solicitation, you should have received a fiscal year 2023 phase 2 award. And you are now preparing your phase 2A application. There's also a phase 2B, and that's when you have successfully completed your initial phase 2 award, but you're not quite ready. Something about the market, something about the product that you're developing has changed, and not that you didn't finish the scope, but you do need more R&D funding to get to closer to commercialization readiness level. So, there's some differences between 2A and 2B in terms of the purpose. And in addition, with the phase 2B, there are two possibilities. With the 2A, you get one shot to apply for it, and that's as your phase 2 award is wrapping up. The phase 2B, the same thing. As your phase 2 is wrapping up, you may submit your phase 2B application. So for those of you who had a phase 2 award in fiscal year 2023, you can be preparing your phase 2B application. However, if you had an award in phase 2 award in fiscal year 2022, you are allowed to take a 1-year gap, and now be applying for fiscal year 2025 for your phase 2B award. Both of these 2A and 2B awards have a maximum amount of $1.1 million and up to 2 years in duration. There's no separate funding for these awards. All of our funding, our SBIR funding is one bucket, STTR is in a different bucket, but it's really just a balance of selecting the most highly meritorious applications. So in a sense, you are competing with other phase 2 applications when award selections are made. There's no target number of awards. It just depends on the quality of applications received under the NOFO, not FOA. Okay, so you should have received a phase 2 award under one of these listed FOAs and this listed subtopic pair in order to be eligible for the phase 2A. I'll leave this up on the screen for a second. You will, of course, be receiving the slides, and this table is also in the NOFO. And here are the continuation of this table. These are the FOA and associated subtopics that are eligible. Those awardees are eligible for submitting this phase 2A application. The review criteria for phase 2A is identical to that of the phase 2. The 3 top criteria are equally weighted. The PIER plan is of a lesser weight than the others. Okay, phase 2B, eligibility criteria. You have to have received a phase 2 award from one of these phase 2 FOAs, with the additional requirement that the bottom 2 come from fusion energy science or the high energy physics offices. For the Phase 2B award, the impact is of greater weight. We put more consideration on the impact because you're supposedly moving now, more closely to commercialization. So it makes sense that we could take the commercialization plan and the technology impact into consideration, and we weight it more heavily for the Phase 2B awards. You're strongly encouraged to include other funding commitments in your application. They will help with the evaluation of the impact in your favor. You all are experts, I assume, at this point, at letters of intent. So this is just a reminder that all Phase 2 applicants are required to submit a letter of intent through PAMS. The deadline is November 6th by 5 p.m. We do not, in contrast with Phase 1 letters of intent, we do not provide any feedback on these. These are just to help us understand what applications are coming in and get the review process lined up and all of our technical reviewers lined up so we can hit the ground running when the applications come in. You do need to have completed your Phase 2 award at the time that your Phase 2A starts. So take a look at how your progress is going. Of course, no cost extensions are allowed, but you should not have a no cost extension that will take your period of performance later than April 14th of 2025. You cannot move the start date of a Phase 2A award. Make sure you have completed your Phase 2 award by April 14th. For Phase 2B, same thing. Make sure that you have completed your Phase 2 award by April 14th of 2025 because you cannot change the start date of the Phase 2B award. So just want to make sure that you have completed your work. And here are some success statistics of Phase 2A. Very similar to Phase 2 at 41% for last year. And for Phase 2B, 24% were awarded. We don't get many Phase 2C applications. As you can see, we get 1 or 2 a year. Last year, we received 1, and it was not selected for award. You may only apply for 1 second Phase 2 application. So you have to decide, am I going to apply for 2A or 2B if you're eligible for both? If you apply for a Phase 2A, or you apply for a Phase 2B this year, please note that you can apply for a Phase 2B next year. Remember, that's the one that allows the 1-year gap. But that is only if you didn't receive your a prior second Phase 2 award. So you only get 1 second Phase 2 award. You can get a 2A or a 2B. You cannot get both. However, if you didn't get a Phase 2B and you're thinking about applying for it again the following year, make sure you completely understand the reason you didn't get an award, because you don't want to understand if you want to understand if that actually makes sense to resubmit. Okay, third Phase 2 awards. These are available under congressionally mandated. It's a pilot, so these are not permanent at this point in time. And these are some of the considerations that Congress directed us to have in making the 2C awards. So you must meet the following criteria. You have to have received a first Phase 2 award and a second Phase 2 award. The Phase 2 or 2B award will have been issued 2 years prior to the time of eligibility for the third award. There's only a 1-shot chance for your Phase 2C. and we are limited to the SBIR program. So your phase 2 and phase 2A or B must be SBIR, not STTR awards. Okay, here's the 2C timeline. Recall, of course, the 2A or 2B can occur immediately after the phase 2 award, and the phase 2C occurs immediately following that. In the event you had a 1-year gap and then got a phase 2B, you would apply immediately after your phase 2B for your phase 2C. Only one opportunity. What is unique about phase 2C, in contrast with all of our other awards, is the applicant has to have matching funds equal to the amount of the phase 2C award. And it must be from an eligible third-party investor. So it is a small business concern, but not the eligible entity. It would be a venture capital firm, an individual investor. It could be a government agency, but cannot be SBIR funding. And so SBIR funding may not be used as matching funds. And then here is a list of funding that do not qualify. Internal R&D funds for your company. In-kind or intangible assets, it must be cash. The owners, family members, or affiliates. And it cannot be loans or other form of debt obligations. You must have the total amount of the matching funds available for expenditure at the grant start date. If that doesn't happen, you may have your award retracted. Your matching funds must be contingent upon receiving the phase 2C award, so make sure that's stated. And they must be expended during the period of performance, and failure to expend the full amount of the matching funds will reduce the amount of award funding correspondingly. And there may be other remedies. And you may also request a no-cost extension. Just like the second phase 2 award, the maximum amount is 1.1 million up to 2 years. This is all part of the phase 2 funding solicitation. So it depends on the meritorious nature of your application. And an agency can use up to 5% of its SBIR funding for 2C awards, which is not a big problem for us since we get really very few of these applications. Again, you all are experts in our process at this point, especially if you're applying for phase 2C. Here is a reminder that a letter of intent is required by Tuesday, November 6th, and you will not receive feedback on your letter of intent. You may request a no-cost extension. Again, just like in the other awards, make sure you're completed by April 14th, 2025, because you cannot change the start date of the phase 2C. And if have you not completed your phase 2, second phase 2 award, you cannot start your grant, your phase 2C grant. Okay, so that is it for my presentation. Just a few reminders about our programs. You should all go check out our SBIR partnering platform. It is a very important resource for innovators. You can register and become a member of this ecosystem in which innovators and partners can meet. Everybody that is an innovator really should be thinking about the partnering that they need to do, whether or not it's subject matter experts, business assistants, engineering design firms, investors, OEMs, lots more. So go ahead and register on that site. Check out the ecosystem. It's a place where you can meet other innovators and potential partners, including potential future customers. We have a application process Q&A webinar. They're starting on October 23rd, next week. If you're eligible for a phase 2 application, you will receive an email invitation probably early next week. There are 4 webinars at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. So hop on a call when you have questions about your application. Here is the email address for application questions. And you should be on our mailing list, and you should be following us on social media. Here are some contacts. I am the Outreach Program Manager. Carol Rabke is our Tech to Market Advisor in partnering. She would be happy to speak to you about your partnering needs. And Dave McCarthy is our Tech to Market Advisor that helps with commercialization programming, such as TABA, the PI meeting, and he also runs the our version of the I-Core program, which we call Phase Shift, which is a customer discovery process. If you haven't been in an I-Core or a Phase Shift program, it is highly recommended for you to have a better or more detailed understanding of your customers. Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to stop sharing, and we're going to move to the Q&A portion of the meeting. Okay, I see 4 questions. Oh, why are only projects in high energy physics and nuclear energy allowed to apply to phase 2B? That is not true. I will go back to that slide just to make sure. And I'm going to go back to that slide and then read the requirements. You are going to get the slides, and I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and I'm going to put it in. I don't know if I can do it can I put it in the chat? Zena, you're going to have to recopy this.
Okay.
These are the eligibility requirements. There are 2 FOAs, and then there's 4 FOAs. 2 FOAs are any awardees. The first 2 FOAs are any awardees from those FOAs. The 3rd and 4th one are specific to fusion energy and high energy physics. We did this little switcheroo thing where fusion energy and high energy physics were in release 2, and they have moved to release 1. So that's why some of those FOAs for those offices are eligible in this release 1. But again, the first 2 FOAs that are listed here, those are all awardees from those 2 FOAs. I hope that's clear. Zena's going to pop that in the chat.
Thank you, Eileen. I received it. I will post it in the chat.
That's eligibility for phase 2B. We probably should put a little note about that as well too. I'm going to type that in.
Let me see.
Is an acceptable reason for continuation a 2B that we did not have enough staff when we started the project, and so we could not complete the project yet, lack of time to finish the project? I think that's probably more of a 2A scope, because 2A is for when you haven't completed the project, not 2B. 2B is when you completed the project, but something changed, the commercial landscape changed, there's some additional features that became clear that your product needed. But I'm going to tell you to send an email to the SBIR, STTR office. Zena can put that in the chat. Because I think we want to look at your project. If you didn't finish the project, you're not going to be able to start your 2A award. So I think if you want to send me an email, I would like to know a little bit more detail about your project and when you plan to finish it, because it does need to be completed by 4/14. I don't know if you're just like not utilizing all the funding of your project. Anyway, probably there's some details in there that I would need to know in order to fully answer your question. So I am going to, Zena, if you could also just put my email in the chat for that particular question.
I will do so. I'm having a difficulty copying what you put in the chat for me, so I'm gonna go ahead and copy it from the FOA.
Can the proposal title for phase 2B be different from that of initial phase 2? I'm not sure if of the answer to that question. I think that the answer is that it should be very close to the initial phase 2. Again, I'm going to ask you to send me an email because our application specialist isn't here to answer that question. Is an ROI spreadsheet required as part of the commercialization plan? Okay, so as I went over in the instructions, the ROI is no longer required. It used to be required, is no longer required. We did just update our website today to take that off to eliminate confusion, so not required. Where can we find guidance on the technical content for a phase 2 award? Since the R&D needs more time and funding, how do we talk about the technical tasks? Your phase 2 application is exactly, has the same requirements as, I'm sorry, your phase 2A has the same requirements as your phase 2 application. You've already written a successful phase 2 application. You just need to talk about what the 2A project will look like. And you do have to submit your phase 2 interim report also as part of the 2A application so that the reviewer understands what you've accomplished and what the next steps are. So you talk about, how do you talk about the technical tasks? Just like you did in the phase 2 application. You talk about what you're going to do, why you're going to do it, but it is going to be different. It's going to be different tasks. If we received a no-cost extension for a phase 2 award, does that affect our eligibility for additional phase 2 awards, so as long as the work is completed before the start date? No, it does not. You do have to complete your work. The expected start date is April 14th, as I indicated. You do need to plan to complete before that date. Our initial phase 2 completed in August. Just want to confirm that we will wait for the 2B application in April. Let me just go back to my slides on the 2B. If you are waiting a year, I mean, you're going to have to go, I mean, if you're going to do it next year, then you should have gotten a fiscal year 23 phase 2 award. And fiscal year 23, I'll go ahead and take a quick look and see when did that complete. And I don't know if you're talking about release 1, so it sounds like you're talking about release 2. And it would be completed in August of 2025. Yeah, so you should be able to wait for a year and come and send your application in for fiscal year 2026. I would like to confirm that for you. That is, from the information I have from you, that's correct, what you asked for. But why don't you go ahead and send me your information, and I'll confirm your award and that you're eligible for phase 2B next year. I am planning to apply for phase 2A. The original SBIR phase 2 was applied in response to 2023 phase 2 release 2. The current NOFO is phase 2 release 1. It depends on what office you have the award for. Remember the slides that I showed on eligibility for phase 2B. If you had a release 2 award, then it would have had to have been from high energy physics. Let me go. Okay, wait a minute. You had a fiscal year 2023 phase 2 release 2. Yes, you will need to wait for phase 2 release 2. Unless your award was from fusion energy science and high energy physics. So again, if you're confused, the best thing is to send me an email with the specifics of your situation, and I can confirm your eligibility. I could show the slides again if someone's asking for me to reshare, so I will go ahead and do that. I will put the eligibility criteria up for phase 2B since I'm having some questions about that. If anybody wants to see any other specific information, there are 47 slides, so I can keep it up. But it would be helpful to know which slides you want to see. We have university subcontractors on our initial phase 2 award. Can you add or remove subcontractors in the phase 2A application? Absolutely. You have to do whatever, in terms of subcontractors, you need to do whatever makes sense to complete your project. You may need additional subcontractors, you may need new ones, etc. But your subcontractors are based on finding the right team and getting the R&D accomplished that you're proposing. Those are the only considerations. To be clear, phase 2A is for when you need initial time funding to complete the work in the initial phase 2, yes. If so, then how could the initial phase 2 be completed? Or by completed, do you mean all the funds of the initial phase 2 to be used by April 14th? The thing is with an initial phase 2 is that things might go off in the wrong direction, or the research maybe failed and then you came up with a different plan. And so when I say completed, you do really need to be in contact with your program manager. If things went off course, you really need to come to an agreement with your program manager over what it means to be completed. I'm not really sort of the judge of that, but if you didn't complete your award because you didn't have enough staff, that tells me that you didn't spend all the money. Again, you should be working with your program manager on what the definition of completed is. Do both phase 2A and 2B require a progress report? Yes, you provide an interim progress report because you may not be done with your phase 2 award. If you're done with your phase 2 award, then you would submit your final report with your application. But if you're not done, then you need to prepare an interim final report that will be submitted with your second or third phase 2 application. I am interested in knowing if we do a no-cost extension for another 6 months after our original end date. Does that allow us to apply for a phase 2B next year, or do we wait for December 2026? Again, I think the best thing is to send me an email. I don't know what FOA you have an award for, and I will look up the information very specific to your award. Go ahead and send me an email. I meant to say I am almost interested in knowing we do a no-cost extension for another 6 months after original end date. Again, this is another question about that. Please send me an email. I mean, I can give you an approximate answer here, but the best thing is for me to give you a definitive answer on your eligibility. Okay, someone wants the eligibility for slide 2A. Let me do that. Okay, there's 2 slides here. I'll show both of them. Here's the first slide showing phase 2A eligibility. And here's the second slide. Can we appeal to SBIR office if our phase 2 award is not listed in the FOA for phase 2 eligibility to apply for phase 2A? I would say the answer to that is probably no. And what I would encourage you to consider applying for a 2B. And you may want to reach out to the program manager to discuss that. And that application should be positioned so that you are talking about the additional work that you need to do to create a product that's closer to commercialization. I'm confused about the length of a no-cost extension. There is no limit to a no-cost extension. You do, if you are going to be getting a subsequent phase 2 award, though, you do need to, for this particular cycle, you need to make sure you finish your project by April 14th, 2025, or you will not be able to receive your phase 2 award, your second phase 2 award. I hope that is, it's just that there's a hard end date for your current phase 2 award if you're going to get a subsequent phase 2 award, and that is approximately April 14th, 2025. Okay, I'm getting another question about eligibility. And I would prefer an email. I'll get back to you in a few days on that if you send me an email about this. It's a little bit of tricky, and I don't want to give people the wrong information by quickly looking something up because it's a little complicated. I understand that people are confused about it. Best thing is to send me an email and we'll confirm whether you're eligible for this year or for a 2B next year. All right, we are getting close to the hour. I'll give people a few minutes. And don't forget that we have our cybersecurity expert here, Flo Carr, and you have the opportunity to ask her questions. However, you can always reach out to her. And we should put Flo's email in the chat box. Sina, if you could do that, that would be helpful too. I should have put it on the slide. I'm sorry that I didn't.
I will do that.
And just take a note that make a note too that she's the cybersecurity expert.
Absolutely.
All right, I'm not seeing any more questions. Please, I'll go back to, I'm going to go to the last slide before we sign off here. Let me get my mouse working. And I do want everybody to take note of the phase 2 application process Q&A webinars. You can ask us anything about your phase 2, 2A, 2B, 2C application. You will receive an email early next week. So I just wanted to remind everybody about that.
Okay.
All right. With that, oh wait, there's something in the Q&A.
Yeah.
The letter of intent will be the same. It's the same process for 2A as it is for 2. All right, I'm going to pass it over to you, Zena. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and reach out with additional questions.
Thank you, Eileen. And thank you, everyone, for attending. As we indicated at the beginning of the webinar, and also Eileen mentioned, the recording and the presentation will be posted on SBIR website under Funding Opportunities webpage. Please keep an eye on that webpage. And until then, have a good evening.